Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer. And I am so happy because today I get to welcome back Kelley Hunter. Hello, Kelley.
Hello, so glad to be back with you.
It's just, I always learn so much from you, and always find you so inspiring. And your Substack, I love your Substack as well.
Oh, yay.
I,
I
I
do too. I really like Substack. It's creatively inspiring.
Yes, I get it, and I love your way of writing. So it's wonderful. Now,
Ah,
so today, I asked you whether you would be willing to come along and talk about what's happening with the Kuiper Belt objects this year, and we are coming up to the spring equinox, and
we are.
and quite a number of us are noticing some fairly intense energies. You were talking about it being, the case last week, and I and many others were commenting on last week. And I
Mm.
there the was it the new moon in Pisces that got you and got no, not the new moon in Pisces that's coming. The the new moon in Aquarius seems to have got you and me at that time as well. Um, and or maybe it was the full moon, I think. Yeah, it was the full moon that you.
It's all of it. All
Yeah,
of the lunations are so
it is,
intense. And
exactly. I'm losing track of which one was which, but it was in fact the full moon that really hit me hard. And you were talking about, feeling like you had to come to a stop. And that's exactly how I felt. And I literally had to stop everything I was doing for about a week because it just became untenable to continue for a bit. So there is a
Mm.
lot going on. And we know that we have the changes of Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune to look forward,
And Jupiter.
and Jupiter as well to look forwards to. So what's going on in the Kuiper Belt?
Well, one of the reasons I like talking with you, Anna Isabel, is because you have such good questions. And I love, how you take it pretty deep. So the we're at the end of February here when we're recording this, and the choreography for March is just so intense and complex and nuanced. And we have so many planets in Pisces moving into Aries and back into Pisces and back into Aries, that this is pretty profound because it's the last sign of the zodiac and the first sign of the zodiac. And any two signs that are right next to each other are so different. And so we have Venus going retrograde in Aries. She goes back into Pisces. She goes back into Aries. 2 weeks later, Mercury goes retrograde at the same place in Aries and goes back into Pisces and back into Aries. Meanwhile, we're having a total lunar eclipse. At the end of March, we're having a partial solar eclipse. We have equinox in there. We have the Venus star point where she is in front of the sun from our point of view. And then Neptune changes into Aries at the end of the month. And later in the year, it goes back into Pisces. And then in 2026, back into Aries. So we have this interesting two signs just being so emphasized with the wave washing out and an strong wave washing in. So over this time, so it's quite a lot to process, quite a lot to be experiencing. And part of what Aries means is it's unprecedented. It's totally new. And the waters are washing away what we've known and bringing in something so new. So we're going to take a look at that and the March into April bit.
I was just listening to you and thinking about, again, how incredibly significant it is because Pisces is the end of the cycle. And I know, as you say, the signs next to each other are always so very different. And we like to think of Pisces as being this very beautiful energy, very gentle, and now we're coming into Aries, which is wham, here I am, kind of thing. And yet nothing has felt gentle in the last few years, shall we say. Everything has felt very confused. And I feel like really we've been experiencing a lot of the shadow side of Pisces. And, just to add to your list, of course, we've had the nodes going in the other direction.
Exactly.
Going Aries back to Pisces. So it feels to me like there's still a lot of Pisces energy that's unresolved because we've been experiencing so much shadow.
Yes.
And kind of need to, you were talking about the waves coming in and going out, and I feel like there's some laundry to be done, or maybe, we're in very murky waters that need to be distilled and purified before we can fully embrace the energy of Aries.
Yes. Well, Pisces can be stormy. Neptune, that rules Pisces, can take his trident and stir up quite a storm. And a couple of months ago, I was on the north shore of Kauai in Hawaii, and there was a huge surge coming in, a really big wave. So people couldn't go surfing. They were even saying don't go swimming because the currents were so, kind of strong. And there's nothing between there and Alaska. So I was watching the waves come in, really strong waves from way out, and they'd come in and they'd crash, and then they'd go back out. And they were still really strong going back out with the turnaround. And then there was another wave coming in. So the outgoing wave would meet the incoming wave, and there would be this foamy crash between the two waves. And then the outgoing wave still had enough energy to keep going out, and it would meet the next incoming wave and have another, kind of foamy crash that would ripple across the wave. And then it would start more losing its energy, and the incoming wave, would kind of take over. But it was interesting to watch and get that sense of how those waves work. And especially when the sea was full of a surge, and we are definitely in a surge, kind of thing. And you mentioned the polluted waters, which are certainly part of the toxicity that Neptune can have, Pisces can have. And it's not all compassion and love, it can be illusion and confusion and delusion. So we are working through that. And then there's this other factor, which is that we're in the change of the age. And this takes years to happen, but we're moving out of the age of Pisces. And like the nodes, the ages move backwards through the zodiac. So we are we're moving into the age of Aquarius. But on the other end of Pisces, we're moving into this really strong Aries dynamic. And like you said, the nodes of the moon were in Aries and Libra. There's still a partial solar eclipse that is in Aries, but mostly the nodes of the moon are emphasizing the leading edge of Pisces being where our collective growth is right now, the direction we're heading in.
I was also just thinking about that strength of the last degree of a sign, and the fact that we are experiencing this surge, and it's that last degree of Pisces that we're going to be experiencing with Saturn. and that we're going to be experiencing with Neptune. Um, so it's just adding again to that intensity of Pisces. And, you know, there have been times in the last few years where I have craved the clarity of
Yes.
Aries. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's, you know, Neptune was at the last degree of Pisces a few months ago. It almost went into Aries and it didn't. It said, okay, you got a little more work to do, everybody. So, you know, and this is like the story I just told of the waves. It's like it's like crashing. It's like the two signs are crashing and creating this like dynamic that it's like the clashing of symbols. You know, it's pretty pronounced, and we have so many the retrogrades of both Venus and Mercury at the same time, basically doing this back and forth. It's just amazing choreography, and I've been seeing that in all of the lunations for a while. And I love that the Kuiper Belt objects are kind of playing into this. And I want to bring in several of them as we go to key points through the year. And, you know, we are missing the gentle part of Pisces, but we're going to get it with Jupiter going into Cancer in May. So June, I'm sorry. So I think that's going to be a gentler, kinder part of the year when we get halfway through.
I like that. And, you know, I was just thinking, Jupiter in Gemini is interesting. I have,
putting it mildly.
yeah, I have a lot of Gemini in my chart. And I guess I've been paying more attention to him in Gemini than I have done before. And I have thought, actually, this doesn't feel like a strong energy to me. And it's of course, you know, he's not in his strength. He's not in Sagittarius. He's in the opposite side of Gemini. And I just think, wow, I hadn't really paid attention to that, but it's felt to me like this Jupiter, how can I put it? I would describe his mood as non-committal. Now I know that it's Gemini.
Yes, Gemini is non-committal. Yeah, it wants to keep options open.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's more of a Jupiter that couldn't care less, it feels like.
Oh.
That's what it feels like. A Jupiter that's going, I don't know. I think I'll just go and he's just not there. That's what it feels like to me.
I have noticed Jupiter very much. I am a Sagittarius.
You are a Sagittarius. Okay, so I want to rephrase what I said. I'm to me, he's noticeable by the lack of oomph that I would expect from him.
Oh.
That's what it is. And so I'm looking at him going into Cancer, and I think, I think Jupiter will be much more present in the house because exalted Cancer.
Yes, that's one of Jupiter's best signs.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But I have definitely felt the Jupiter opposite my Sun and my Mercury. But it's been squaring Saturn. And during the Mercury retrograde in December, when Mercury was in Sagittarius and opposite Jupiter, anyway, I felt like I was spinning plates. I felt like so many things were going on. I was having a really hard time keeping straight about things, and that was Gemini to me. And
now that's interesting because, you know, one of the things about Jupiter, one of the ways in which he can cause mischief is also through confusion and too many options.
Too many
things.
Yeah.
And it's true, actually, that I have experienced that very, very strongly. But he just doesn't feel like himself to me. He's out of sorts. He's out of sorts. And maybe that's why I have that sense of he's adding to the this confused mix.
Well, squaring Saturn,
Exactly.
in Pisces, that there is confusion. And part of the question with Jupiter is, what do you believe? And that's been very hard and to figure out with all this Pisces energy. So one of the things about the positive sides of Jupiter in Gemini is basically saying, be open-minded. Anything is possible. So stay open-minded. And it's a bit challenging us to examine our belief systems when some other piece of information comes along that it's like, you don't want to deal with. Because Saturn's like, So that's been part of the lesson or the teaching, I think, of Jupiter and Gemini.
Absolutely. Information overload.
Yes.
That's the information overload. And I do feel like in Gemini, he's not been in the best of moods, and he keeps throwing thunderbolts at us with huge amounts of information. And we're going, whoa,
Yeah.
process this right now.
Yeah. And this is going on
exactly
into June to some extent. Yeah.
So let's hear about the Kuiper Belt.
Okay. So I'm going to share some images because I love images and I think they convey a lot. And this is one way I like to introduce the Kuiper Belt object. So let me screen share and find what I want to share. Hold on a minute here. Okay. That should do it. I just want to remind people where the Kuiper Belt is out there beyond Neptune. And Pluto is in the Kuiper Belt. I keep needing to remind myself, not to mention everybody else, that Pluto is the king of the Kuiper Belt, right on the front edge there, and still the largest of the Kuiper Belt objects so far. So that's that. And so first of all, let's look at the Pisces dimension, because yes, we have North Node in Pisces, we have Neptune in Pisces, we have Saturn in Pisces, and we have Tehran Waco in Pisces. Now, this is not one a lot of people have heard about, but it is so integrated into what is happening now. I really want to share more about Tehran Waco. That's an Iroquois creator god, descended from the star people. His mother is Sky Woman, Star Woman, and came from the previous world through a hole in the sky. And Tehran Waco is a double object. So the myth was chosen by the astronomer who named it for a double-bodied myth. So Tehran Waco has a twin brother, Sawiskara. And it's not a moon, it's a companion object. So it's a double-bodied object. And so he's known as Sky Holder. He's known as creating a lot of the things in the world based on what else was thrown down through that hole in the sky from the previous world into what I think of as sort of the etheric field. And Tehran Waco has spiritual sight. So he was tuning in to these things from the previous creation that he brought back into this one. So this was all the animals, this was plants, this was birds, this was humans. So he created humans and breathed the breath of spirit into the humans. Now, Sawiskara was his evil twin and was jealous of the creative capacity that Tehran Waco had. So he would try to copy him or undermine his creation in some way or other. But he didn't have that breath of spirit. he didn't have the spiritual sight, so he could not do that. So he would create mosquitoes or some and the main thing is he would try to deceive the humans and talk them out of honoring the spirit and following the ceremonies, the spiritual ceremonies that Teron Wako taught the people before he went back to the sky world. He also planted food and showed them how to farm. He put a sunflower in the sky to light up the sky. Really a beautiful energy. I live in the area of the world where the Iroquois, Confederacy lives. And it's in the northeast of the North America, even from the United States into Canada, it crosses the border. And this picture, which is my drawing for my Planetary Gods and Goddesses coloring book, shows some of the symbols of the Iroquois people. The white pine, the three sisters that are the corn and squash and beans that they live with, and Turtle Island. And so he has this, I've met so many indigenous peoples too, all indigenous peoples, I think, a really strong rapport with the land. And he did give these ceremonies so the people would stay in touch with the heavens and stay on track, living in honor of the divine. But again, Sawisker would try to, kind of steal them away and poison their minds. And Teron Wako was known as good mind and Sawiskara as bad mind. So there's a lot of these, kind of themes that go along with Teron Wako. And Teron Wako is right about at 22 degrees of Pisces right now, so very involved with the total lunar eclipse on March 14th, specifically, and conjuncting Saturn. And Neptune is already conjuncted Teron Wako a few years ago. So it's the Peacemaker is another one of his themes. And I just want to name some of these themes: this deep rapport with the land, with tribes and native peoples, with the tribal and traditional ways, again, going with the, honoring, the stories, the seasonal honoring of what's going on with nature. Many of the names we give the full moon, like the last one was the snow moon. We had a lot of snow here for sure, but that based on what's going on in nature. So, this connection between heaven and earth being very strong. And if the people are not following and keeping the ceremonies, things get out of whack. So just take a look, at where your Teron Wako is in the little ephemeris down in the corner there, just so you get a take on it. It's farther out. Almost all of these are farther out than Pluto. So this orbit's almost 300 years. So it's a smaller, slower mover is what I mean to say. And Teron Wako will finally go into Aries in about 2031 or 32. So it's still got a ways to go in Pisces, but it's very integrated into what we're experiencing in this coming month in March and into April as well, and with the changing of the signs.
I just listening to you, I'm thinking about how much there's an affinity here between him and also Pisces, that duality, the two fish. And the fact that with Neptune having been in Pisces, um, with him, we were talking about the shadow side of Pisces, but the one thing that I have felt since Neptune has been in Pisces is that there has been a very strong spiritual reconnecting on the part of large swathes of people. And it comes in many forms. I have never in my life found so many people openly talking about spirituality or wanting to explore different spiritual paths, Christianity being emphasized very strongly as well. There's so much. There seems to be a real thirst. I was going to say hunger, but it feels more like a thirst for rising above the material paradigm that it has been, I was going to say inflicted upon us, but, pushed for, many generations now, and which holds complete supremacy in terms of education and governance, government as well. So I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about the emphasis on the land, and it made me think of Taurus and how Uranus has been in Taurus, and how this period of Uranus in Taurus has, because of the extremes that are being imposed on the farming community, and the food production, and the wanting to take land from farmers for building underground data centers and solar farms and everything. Nothing to do with nature, nothing to do with the land. And what I'm seeing here is a kind of resurgence or reawakening of the need to go back to farming in harmony with nature.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and this conversation is getting stronger lately. And like you said, the mundanity, I made up a word, the secular aspect of life that is denying spiritual reality. So here's a little bit more about Tyrone Wako, with this fabulous book that is a fairly recently published book, the Ratunanshani, which represents the longhouse of the Iroquois people, where they meet periodically for days or weeks and tell the story of Tyrone Wako and Sawiskara, tell the story of the peacemaker that was one of the most famous stories. It's talked about, it's retold in Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey, that was published decades ago now. And it, with Hiawatha, and the peacemaker who came to travel through all of the nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. It's quite a large nation, all these nations that make up the Confederacy, and they were coming around to help overcome the negative fighting that got going through the influence of bad mind of Sawiskara, and to bring peace back to the people and among the nations. And this is why I think this is so meaningful right now, because that's another thing that's going on right now, is this seeking of peace between the nations. And there was the Great Law of Peace, that was a book that was written in part about the peacemaker and he was a real person, and he went around and helped bring peace back to the people and bring back their honoring of the ceremonies and more of the spiritual alignment. And so they get together and they tell these stories, and they do the Thanksgiving prayer, which takes at least a day, if not 2 or 3, to thank every single living creature on the earth. It's beautiful. And so there's some very beautiful traditions here. And their great law of peace actually influenced the founders of the United States in terms of what is included in the Constitution. So there's a very strong influence on the history of the United States here from the Iroquois Confederacy. So it's a beautiful story, and it's really coming back around for our times.
I'm always struck when I am listening to the stories of the Iroquois and just the North American indigenous tribes, because the spirituality runs so deep, and it moves me so greatly. I love it so very much. And to be reminded of some of those wonderful principles that take us back to finding spirit through the land. I think that's what I was wanting to get at earlier when I was talking about Uranus and Taurus as well.
Yeah.
Is because it's that connection between the land and spirit, which of course, comes from a spiritual view that God is in everything, and therefore everything is sacred, which has lost for various reasons, and people are forever going to debate, the nature of God and whether God is an external force that must be worshipped externally, or whether God is in everything. And some of us hold that paradox or don't see the paradox and go, well, yeah, if he created the world, well, surely everything is God. Some of us don't see that distinction. And to in this time have this beautiful reminder in the sky of the sanctity of all life,
yes,
is a wonderful thing. And I think that that's what I was trying to get at with this Uranus transit through Taurus over the last 7 years, and the very explicit attacks on the land and those who work with the land. And it's kind of stimulated a reconnection with the land and with food, and farmers looking at the way that they've been farming, and many going, maybe we ought to be doing something else. And in fact, I've just done an interview for another one of my channels with a farmer precisely on this subject. And, you know, the very idea of regenerative farming.
Yes. And there's permaculture too, another way of working with the land in harmony.
Everything that I'm coming across, biodynamics becoming more popular.
Yes.
As you say, the permaculture, electroculture.
Yes.
The whole idea of no dig systems, everything that is, it sounds so revolutionary, but actually it's going back to how it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's looking at working with nature in a much more respectful way, which is the beginnings of a resurgence of that reconnection with the spiritual side of nature.
Yes, getting back to basics in so many ways for our own health, our own sustenance. So yeah, that's really beautiful. So here's and I wanted to say, Pisces, I think that's one of its highest teachings or one of the highest spiritual sides of Pisces is the fact that we're all in this together, like we're all drops in the ocean. And when we move into Aries, we clarify our drop. So, but we still are a drop in the ocean. We are never separated from it.
And I love what you just said. You know, we clarify our drop. And I think what that, to me, that means we understand our purpose and our part to play. You know, which bit of the puzzle are we actually expressing? And we have to know who we are in order to be able to do that, so that we can contribute to the whole.
Yeah, so we're shedding a lot. It's like the water is washing us, you know, so there's pretty strong waves. And but this is part of the Pisces. This is part of the next month or two, you know, with a lot of this Pisces to Aries. But this, you mentioned that the upcoming new moon, which is in just a couple of days, February 27th, right?
Yes.
Am I in the right week?
I think in the right week. Yes.
So much Pisces. The sun in Pisces, moon in Pisces, Ceres is in Pisces, Saturn's in Pisces, Mercury's in Pisces, North Node in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, and here we have Tehran Wako. Now, I learned how to pronounce it through a teacher of astronomy in the Iroquois Confederacy, one of the nations. So I was invited onto an astronomy of the Iroquois. And it was so interesting because he talked about how, you know, the naming of the moons and going with the seasons and the celebrations and all of that. And then he got into the creation story and started talking about Tehran Wako and Sawisker. And I got so excited. And I said, do you know they've just named something in the far solar system, a double body named Tehran Wako and Sawiskra? And he paused and he said, they didn't ask us. And it stopped me to think more about how we need to honor the culture from which these names come, because part of the teaching of any of these Kuiper Belt objects is connected to the culture and the land from which this teaching came. So that was a big wake up for me. And I talked to the astronomer who did give the name, and her family is from upper state New York, which is basically Iroquois territory, and she knew about that myth. So anyway, just a little side story of my own research and how I've been developing my approach to these Kuiper Belt objects. And now, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the impact of that statement, and it being a further illustration of the irreverence that our culture has for everything, and not understanding that it's not a mythology, it's a living spiritual.
Yes, connected to the land. This book I'm showing, the Ratan and Chani, the author was taken to different places in the Six Nations territory where certain things happened. It's like the song lines in Australia. And, you know, I'm very hesitant to talk about Algira. That's one of the Kuiper Belt objects named from the Aboriginal peoples, because I have not been there. So, and the same with some of the others. But let's go into the Aries section now, which is very big with the Kuiper Belt objects. So Salacia is one of the favorites of the Kuiper Belt objects. A Roman name, so, you know, from the Greco-Roman tradition. And married to Neptune. She was a beautiful mermaid who makes the sunlight sparkle on the sea. And so, you know, Neptune wanted to marry her, but she thought he was just flirting, and she's not that kind of girl. So she went off into the far sea, And he sent a dolphin to find her and say, yes, I want you to be my queen. So she came back, but I love that self-honoring of Celestia. That is very Aries to me, because I think of Aries being a sign of integrity of self-integrity. You know, some people call that selfishness, but you're the only one who is yourself. So live up to it. And that's part of what we're being called to. Like you were saying, we have to find ourself in order to find our life purpose. So Celestia is right around 10 degrees of Aries right now, which is where Venus is going retrograde on March 1st. And 2 weeks later, Mercury goes retrograde at 8 or 9 Aries. So Celestia is very present right now in the retrograde re-evaluation of Venus and of the rethinking of Mercury retrograde. So this is a very strong influence here. And I love Celestia because she just lights everything up. She sparkles, she shimmers. She has to do, in my mind, with these plasma waves that are coming in from the area of the galaxy we're in right now, and also on the solar flares and the solar waves, and that there is a lot of this light energy coming in that is also part of what we're being called to kind of recalibrate, you know, in our own bodies, in our own systems, and to let the saltiness. So, you know, she's salty. That's what her name means. S-A-L means salt. And the Greek philosopher Pythagoras said, salt is born of the purest parents, the sun and the sea. So the salt water and the oceans, you know, and she was in Pisces for quite a number of years there, 1994 to 2016, 17, when she went into Aries. So she's in Aries for a good long while here, and take a look at where your Celestia is, or Salacia people say, or Salacia sounds like a Spanish pronunciation to me, but no, there she is. She has a bit of a fluidity because she sparkles on the incoming waves, and to me it's a kind of language. You know, it's sometimes I wonder if the sea stars, those are the starfish, kind of echo or reflect where the stars are in the sky sometimes, as they can gather. Anyway, that's one of my little stories.
I do love her energy and the symbolism behind her. But I was actually thinking about the marriage of having such a yin energy in a yang sign, in the yang sign. There's such a yang sign. And I was wondering whether you feel that this would be indicative of a need to balance those energies and honor them both.
I'm not sure that she's entirely yin. I mean, she does make the sunlight sparkle on the sea. So she definitely has this creator side. She's the one that does this. But that's an interesting thought.
I guess I'm thinking of, you know, mermaids as being, you know, a very yin energy.
Oh, well, it's certainly very, you know, sensual and fluid and
the sparkle feels to me like a yin energy also. But you're right, if there is this link with the sun and light, that's also quite a yang energy too.
And I like that she's the queen, Neptune's queen. So they are a cosmic pair. And where Neptune can be quite stormy, she can kind of help calm that sea. You know, so there's something in the dynamic here that is, I think, very helpful for these very strong waves coming in and going out. So when I was watching those waves on the North Shore of Kauai, I also was seeing the incoming wave. And at a certain point, just before it crashed onto the sand, I could see this, that like just, it was so hard to see, but it was a little like flash of turquoise light. And I was fascinated by that. And because I'd never seen that before. And I don't know if that was Celestia, but there was something about the lighting up of the sea and the sun coming through and that turquoise through a very, like the wave is very thin when it's just curving. And it wasn't foam, it was just a flash of turquoise. So that was a new thing for me. And, I lived in the Caribbean for many years, and that sea is so incredibly turquoise. So Celestia is lighting it up. She's lighting up the Venus and the Mercury and our mental and emotional connection between heart and mind. I think this is just gorgeous. This is like totally, there she is. She's very hard to resist. She's delightful. So let's go with that. Let's go for delight.
Absolutely.
And delight, So that's Celestia. And so she's like around 10 degrees. But also in Aries is Manwe. Now, these Manwe and Varda are the highest archangels from Tolkien's creation story in his prehistory of Middle Earth. It's told at the very beginning of the Silmarillion, which was published after he was born, and tells a lot of the history of all the world of the elves and all of the different characters, and his like amazing imagination that is very visionary. And I think it's pretty awesome that astronomers named two of these Kuiper Belt objects for Tolkien characters, and the archangels of all. So these are the highest of the male and the highest of the female archangels that were in the choir of angels that circled the throne of the Creator. The first, in a sense, the first created energies. And they started singing one by one, and then became this choir of angels, and it evoked a vision in the mind of God that of earth and of the creation. And 14 of these archangels wanted to go experience that. So they went to earth and found that they had to create the Creator's vision. And so Manwe was the closest to the mind of God, the Lord of the winds, of the airs. The birds would speak to him, especially eagles. So he's the breath, he's prana, and he's closest to the mind of God. So he knows what that original blueprint was. And like in the story of Tamro Nwako and Sawiskara, there was a fallen angel who was jealous of the creative power of the Creator that the other archangels were manifesting, and he would destroy what they'd created because that was the only way he could express his power. And so then, the world they created would be destroyed, and they would recreate the next age. And if we are at the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and even maybe a little further into it, Manwe is bringing back the original blueprint of the creation, and is in Aries now. At this year, Manwe moves from, where are my notes, from like 2 to 5 of Aries, and is conjunct the Venus star, which is Venus conjunct halfway through her retrograde. She conjuncts the sun. She stands in front of the sun from our point of view. This is often considered the beginning of the new cycle of Venus that lasts for 540 days or so. I forget numbers sometimes, so you'll have to do a fact check on me. But so, but he and went into Aries just the last couple of years, right across this Aries point that we are now having multiple factors cross into this clarity of energy. So Neptune is moving into alignment with Manwë. This is a very high spiritual energy. If these are the highest of the archangels, this is beautiful. And Saturn and Neptune together, Saturn manifests the vision of Neptune, or the dream, like the big dream that the collective is holding. And I don't want to say waking up to going into Aries, but clarifying, out of this muddle of toxic, waters and all the flooding and everything that is clearing the way in a very chaotic time. What is coming out of this?
I think that actually waking up is also a good term to use, funnily enough, because Neptune is so linked with dreams.
Yes, that's true.
And the subconscious. And I do feel like we've been kind of sitting in something that's very subconscious, and that has been coming into consciousness. And it's almost like, for some people, they're opening their eyes, kind of blinking, going, did that just happen?
Yes, that's true.
And so
that's true. There is a great awakening going on, isn't there?
I do feel like there is this element of coming out of a dream into reality and going,
maybe a nightmare in some cases.
Exactly right? That, where people are going, oh, I've woken up and, it feels like a nightmare. And is this how it always was? Has it always been like this? Should we be looking at doing something else? What do we do here? And I have never heard more people considering, or asking the question of what is reality, and what does reality consist of? So there's all of these different processes that we're going through, and all these questions we're asking. So I think I don't think you're far off there when you're using the word awakening, because I think that these are different strands of experience of this energy.
Yes, and if some of the illusions are like scales falling from our eyes, it's hard. And there we go back to belief systems. It's really hard to believe. So when Jupiter goes into Cancer in June, there's a new moon on June something or other. June, let's see, I'm looking ahead here. There's a new moon on June 11th. That's the full moon. The new moon is on June 25th. So there's a new moon at 4 Cancer. Jupiter is at 3 degrees and squaring Manwë. So Manwë is involved with this beneficent Jupiter transit coming in. So, and there's a lot of passage back and forth between Pisces and Aries. And so hold that thought. I'll get back to that in a second. But I do want to mention Varda here, because they are like, I wrote an article that's on my website called Tolkien's Twin Souls, because they work there together. And Varda was the star lady of the elves, most beloved, radiant with the light of the Creator. She created each age, she created a new form of light. She created the stars. She put the sun and the moon in the sky. And she's about to change sign and go across the solstice point next year in 2026. And at the end of this year, there is the last new moon of 2025 is conjunct Varda. So I love that. And squaring Neptune and Saturn. So she's in on this too. And I had to mention her because when they're together, they activate each other's capacity. Manwë can see further, and Varda can hear further. So it's the sound and the light, a kind of energy that they amplify for each other. And so Varda is going across the solstice point next year, and Manwë has just gone across one of the equinox points. So they are working together.
Just coming back, to this Pisces Aries dance, one of the temptations for Pisces is to look to be rescued and to look for a savior, and the idolizing of others, and I do feel that one of the lovely things about Aries is to say, well, actually, do you know what? I think I'm going to do it myself.
Yes. We're the ones we've been waiting for.
We're the ones we've been waiting for. Exactly.
Yes.
We are the cavalry.
Yes.
And I think
so anytime something goes across that cusp, it goes into Aries, and the first degree of Aries has the most beautiful Sabian symbol. A woman emerges from the sea, embraced by a seal. So there's this beautiful evocation of the divine feminine, of the sea creatures and the earth. And, there's this isn't an old legend that from the Celtic culture, I believe. And it's just beautiful. And on that beach in Kauai, where I was watching those waves, a seal had been born, and it was hanging out on that beach almost every day.
Oh, wow. That is just lovely. And
I know. We're living myth. We are living mythology, and mythology is living.
Yeah.
So we're invited into a new story now, and to create a new story, and to this is Aries. This is a fresh start. The beauty of Aries at one of its highest is fresh approach, like no baggage. And that's, Pisces trying to wash away all the old sand castles of our illusions so we can meet this new era fresh. And so that's that we are getting so many activations of this Sabian symbol. I just love it.
I was also just thinking about, when we were saying, we are the cavalry, the beautiful thing about that is that it's a reminder that it's up to us to create.
We are creators. And that's what these Kuiper Belt objects invite us into, that realization. We have to go through the Pluto. We have to go through the underworld, kind of stripping down to get to the creator gods, but there they are. This is quantum consciousness, that we are tuned into the field of energy, and we can tap into anything we want. And it's like Tyrone Wacko, seeing the etheric energy of something and then pulling it into, like Saturn will do. Saturn is a manifester. It's like, you want that? Here it is, real. It's situational. It's circumstantial. It's reality check. So it's going to help manifest the dream, whatever dream we are dreaming. So dream high, dream clear, dream with the light of Celestia. Don't be pulled down into the undertow and the darkness and the fear. We don't even need to look back. Look forward. This is a forward-looking energy that we're being invited into. And, we have Neptune changing sign and a transition into 2026, and then Uranus changing sign. and going into Gemini to meet Sedna, who's also a deep sea energy. So there's this deep sea energy, while there is the newness coming out of that those waves, coming out of the foam, like Venus was born from the foam on the sea. This is just an incredibly, I'm optimistic. Well, I'm a positive-minded Sagittarius most of the time. And it's not like I'm trying to ignore or, be like hopeful. It's more like, let's keep the vibe high and go for the best possibility we can imagine.
Yes, it's taking a leaf out of Sagittarius. That would be to aim that arrow high. So I think that's that it's just a beautiful way of looking at what we can do ourselves, each and every one of us, how we can contribute to creating something new. Aries is the first sign, so it's about birth, and so we could talk about creation with Aries. People don't often talk about creativity and creation with Aries, but it is the first sign.
It is. It's a cardinal sign. It is. It's on the creative leading edge, and it's like I think of Aries as like those cartoons where there's a light bulb going on over the head. Aries is like that. It's like a flash. It's like an insight. It's like, so, we've been gestating, kind of something inside ourselves that wants to kind of give birth. And what is that? How's that going to look? So we can use these retrogrades of Venus and Mercury now that Mars has turned forward, and we can kind of say, okay, now what? And to take into account the new possibilities that have been opening up through this Mars in Gemini, through Aries going like, oh, what's happening now? We've got to like, where are we at now based on what's going on now? Aries is more in the moment than a lot of signs, and I think that's true of Gemini as well.
Actually, being in the moment is not a bad lesson for us at the moment, because so many of us are finding it very difficult to be grounded, because our minds are constantly, it's that information overload we were talking about, combined with the emotional stress that feels very, very much about survival as well.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to be in the moment for a lot of people. So this is not a bad thing.
No, it's all good. Go with the good
moment.
Even through my very stressful week I had so much going on. I can't believe I actually scheduled a week like that. And it was like, okay, I can freak out or I can lean into it. And I leaned into it, and I got through it, and it was, in its own way, rather thrilling.
Yeah, funnily enough, last week felt exactly the same for me, and there were points at which I felt breathless. It was just so intense that I was just having to remember, okay, I've got the number of people that I was bringing together for different things, and I caught myself thinking, I think I need to breathe. So let's just be in the moment and breathe into this experience and do.
Yes.
Be done.
And a new breath, a full breath, and Manwe rules prana, rules the life force in the air. So think of that. And another comment is the South Node is in Virgo. So listen to your body and attend to your body, take care of your body. This is a grounding. And Virgo has such a connection to, what our body it needs, to our awareness of our physicality. So that's a place to start. And then we can set sail across the horizon.
Kelley, I am so grateful for the vision that you have shared with us today. It's wonderful to explore these different energies. You were talking about having to get through Pluto to get to the creator gods, and it made me think about the very old spheres, the circles, where the spirit is coming through each of the planets to come
Yes.
to the earth.
Yes.
That's what it made me think of, and so it feels in a sense like going back to that vision of
Going back out.
of coming back out, through the moon and out, through Saturn, in order to reach further and go beyond, the Uranus and the Neptune and the Pluto to get to that. So we are kind of ending where we started.
Yes.
With this idea that we need to reconnect with spirit and with spirit of the creator.
And Saturn in Pisces is dissolving some of our sense of limitation.
Yeah, which is a very welcome thing.
Yes.
Thank you once again.
Lovely.
I mentioned your Substack earlier, and I will be putting a link to that in the description box. Kelley, how do people find you?
Well, Substack's a good way, and because you can email me, and if you don't know about Substack, it's a great platform, and you can subscribe for free or make contributions, and very accessible. And then my website is www.heliastar.com. Helia standing for the feminine sun energy. So those are the two best places, and you can email me through any one of those. And I am doing readings. I'm taking a little bit of a break because I'm doing two things. I'm trying to finish. I am finishing some putting material together about Pluto in many ways, and I want that to be out there soon. And Pluto being one of the Kuiper Belt objects, it's also leading me into designing more of a class series, some kind of program to be teaching about the Kuiper Belt objects. I know there are other people doing that, but I'm going to do it too.
Well, I can't wait to see that happening. So thank you. And speaking of Substack, a reminder to you all that I also have a very new Substack, which is kind of whimsical. And it is about my relationship with the plant world, as well as my lovely companion, Teddy, the dog, our adventures. And I do also look at astrology. So look for me there. The link for that also is in the description box. Thank you all for watching. My thanks once again to you, Kelley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here and being interested and being part of this journey we're all on.
It's a beautiful ride. Thank you. And until next time, have a fantastic week. Goodbye.